Hey everybody, Lewis here with Status Coup. We are on the ground in East Palestine. I'm about to interview resident Chrissy Ferguson. You've probably seen her on Status Coup before. Another emotional interview where she outlines what the current state of her situation is. If you want to make sure that we can continue to do these on-the-ground reports from East Palestine and other places, the best way to do so is by becoming a member. StatusCoup.com/join for as little as $5 to $10 a month. It might not sound like a lot, but it makes a huge difference to make sure that we can continue getting the stories of these residents out there. Thanks so much, and here's the interview with Chrissy. So we are here on the ground in East Palestine, once again with Chrissy Ferguson. First off, thank you so much for staying in touch with us throughout all of this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for not giving up and not forgetting about us, trying to help get the word out.
No, it's a small part that we're happy to try to play here. I guess first off, just general update. I mean, how have things been going? It's been a couple months since we've been here. What's the status of your current situation and how have things been going?
Well, still not home. Still have not heard anything about how long we will have the home for.
Your temporary
Yes,
spot.
our
Yep.
temporary housing. They were supposed to contact me between July and September, the railroad, to, once they got the final findings, tell me what the next step would be with our home. Now they're not returning my phone calls when I call, so I don't know what's going to happen with that.
Gotcha. Obviously we're in the middle of that kind of time frame right now, and you're in kind of a little bit of a special case, from what I understand. Correct me if I'm wrong, but to remind folks, Sulphur Run essentially is in a tunnel through Chrissy's backyard, kind of just behind where the camera is right now. And you know, when you get flooding events and whatnot, that would flood into your basement. That's a normal kind of thing.
Our pipes from our home actually go into that tunnel.
Gotcha.
Years ago, that's where the sewer systems went. And then when they updated that, the city did an amazing job of updating that, but they never closed the pipe off.
Gotcha.
So the tunnel was falling apart. When you go in it, it's pieces of cement has actually broke loose from the top. So I don't know if it's a risk for them to go in, but it still floods.
Right.
It still floods.
And I would imagine, so yesterday we went out with Christina Seisloff from over in Darlington into Leslie Run to go see what the situation was there. And we were still seeing, you know, rainbow plumes and whatnot when you're flipping over bigger rocks and whatnot in Leslie Run. And that is downstream
the one
from.
that they said was doing great. The EPA said it was not contaminated, and they did an article with the newspaper. And then the next day, the same reporter from the Morning Journal came, and she seen otherwise.
Right. And I mean, if we're seeing that contamination in Leslie Run, Sulphur Run is going to be worse than that, just based on this is where the contamination came right from. The derailment site is not far away, just upstream up Sulphur Run, and that's running really close to your home here.
Yes.
I guess has Norfolk Southern and the EPA informed you that you're gonna be a part of this? You know, there's been a lot of talk about the cleaning program that's kind of going on in town, where they come in and clean your home. Once they clean your home, you're kind of sent back in, or because of this situation with the drain pipes and being the creek here, are you kind of an exception and they're trying to, you're in limbo?
I'm that special circumstance from day one that they referred me as. So my point, when I've discussed this with Mark Durno, I've discussed this with the railroad, as long as that creek is contaminated and floods in my basement for a month and a half, a pocket of vinyl chloride sat directly underneath the pipe from my home. That's when it smelled the worst.
Right.
A cleaning that would be like dusting. No, the soil's contaminated. They would have to remove the soil, the sandstone foundation, the cedar lap siding,
Right.
basically tear the house down and rebuild it. Or they can just come stay for a year and let me know, and I'll stay at their house. I'll
Right.
trade houses, but I'm not going to bring my family back.
And I guess what has, members of the EPA have been in here before. I guess I'm curious, more recently, have they offered to do any new testing in your home? Obviously, one of the last times I talked to you, we discussed how the testing that was done, they, saw numbers on their devices that were not initially written down on their phone. They called, or written down on the form. They called supervisors. We'll make sure there's a link to that if you want to see that full interview to explain it all. Since then, did they ever do any additional testing? Has that even been discussed?
Michael Regan had came after that, and they did testing within what their standards are, but we all know that changes at a drop of a dime.
Right.
Any standard seems to be erased
Yeah.
through this special circumstance. But through that video, you can hear my air monitor go off nonstop. You can hardly hear a conversation between me and Michael Regan
Right.
because of the sound going off so much.
Right.
That's when they were saying that the home was safe. But then we tested positive for vinyl chloride, so we know the home wasn't safe.
Right. I want to ask you about that, actually. So, excuse me. A couple months back, several residents, including yourself, all were kind of battling to seek out vinyl chloride testing. It's a urine test, and it was very difficult, first off, for all of you to get this test. We've spoken with quite a few folks, including yourself, and the last time I was here, you had just gotten your results back, and they were some of the highest results we were seeing in town, unfortunately. I've talked to at least a dozen residents who've all tested positive for vinyl chloride, although I'm sure that the number is much higher than that.
Yes.
We heard of someone that's close to you, actually. We heard about this from Dr. Chai, though, an 18-year-old athlete who tested positive for vinyl chloride.
Yes, my daughter's boyfriend.
Yep. And I guess to date, have those tests been easier to get? And I guess have more people been getting these tests, or have they kept it very difficult?
They were briefly more available for those, but it was a short time lapse, and then it went to very difficult to get, if not impossible. Most of that is now problems with the labs. Now that we have a doctor that would help us with that, now it's the labs. And from what I'm understanding, it's almost nationwide, if not nationwide. I know of people that tried in Texas to get tested, that had left Ohio and still could not get tested.
Couldn't get them done there.
That far.
Yeah. And did you ever, the crazy thing that was occurring during that, folks are turning positive for vinyl chloride left and right, and, you ask your doctor, what do I do now that I've tested positive? Like, what can I do? Have you ever gotten any more answers as to, like...
I just got an appointment with my doctor from waiting February 12th, and it was supposed to be yesterday, and he canceled it. So I haven't seen him, but I guess it's time to find a different doctor.
Right.
I do have someone out of state working with me now. That is a blessing.
And you're hopeful to kind of learn more about the situation?
Yes.
Or okay.
And treatment, prevention. I believe that God gives us miracles every day. So, and I believe he uses people and brings people into your life to help you on your walk. So I am still remaining positive that just because we have this does not mean that cancer's gonna follow. You have your bad days and your days where you just cry. it's still very difficult. I can't get past February 3rd because they've not approached me about a home. I can see the park. You give money to help the community. But help everyone, help those of us that can't be here. That would be a blessing. That's what our leaders, our city leaders should think of. You could do a park, but you could help the residents. Candace is going to have to go home with her kids. They're not going to help anymore.
Right.
These people are sentencing those children to what most of us pray every day does not happen. Nobody's helping. You're going to send a family back to a home that they're going to get sick, and that you've got the CDC, and they're just A1. You think they did so good with COVID. They sat there telling us, well, there's no way to get it, nothing to do about vinyl chloride, but we know how to treat the cancer.
When I heard that, I mean, I wasn't here for that meeting, but when I saw that, Eric Causa had live streamed it, my jaw dropped. I mean, it was absolutely horrendous how they're going through and explaining this situation to you in the least delicate way possible. Unfortunately, I mean, vinyl chloride is a carcinogen. Maybe that's the most honest thing they're saying. I hope that is not the case. Yeah. But the fact that that's the way they're handling this at this point is ridiculous. Yeah.
In Granitesville, South Carolina, when NS had the derailment and 9 people died from the chlorine, they were immediately decontaminated. The residents in that town, they had an action plan to try to help them. I begged Mark Durno to call the manufacturer of vinyl chloride to ask them, there has to be a protocol as safe for when workers are exposed. And he didn't find it beneficial to do. And then later on, as I talked to him, I said, that really hurt me when you said that. But then I realized you only had a short window to do that.
Right.
And you didn't want to create mass panic.
Right.
And he said yes. So the CDC prolonging this testing for us, everyone thinking that we just were a town of less than wealthy Appalachian people that just would go with anything that they were saying. Basically, it wouldn't have happened in a rich community. They would have had the treatment. But we were just cast aside over greed. It was to get that back up and running. Everyone's life, 4,000 some residents' lives didn't matter. They didn't. And that was from our government right along with the railroad.
Right. Yeah, I mean, at this point, I can't phrase it better than you did, but the government is absolutely complicit in a lot of this. Sure,
Yes.
they didn't. It's not their fault that this necessarily happened here to begin with. However,
It's their fault of how it's been handled.
absolutely, when you've got, we can go through a whole laundry list of lies or mistruths by the EPA, things that they still stand behind to this day, including the residential air testing, which we've proven time and time again is not sufficient.
Yes. We have Mark Durno recorded saying it wasn't.
Right.
I don't know why somebody won't step up and change that.
Right. They can't admit that they were wrong. Another agency too. I mean, you mentioned the CDC. When the CDC was here, they weren't even at the derailment site. They were going door to door doing just kind of like check-ins with residents to see, you know, I believe they're doing a survey on health symptoms. Members of the CDC got sick and they left within 24 hours. And, you know, we saw that CNN did a story on this, and the CDC admitted, yes, this happened. But, you know, it's all, the EPA says it's safe. It's fine to be here. No worries. You know, and as you said, you know, we're talking with Candace later today.
But
many residents are being sent home.
They have a fenced-in facility in Columbiana that the EPA stays at. With security, but they don't stay here.
Right.
So, I mean, I think those campers, if it's so safe, let some of us that may be forced, let us have the campers and you come stay here.
Yeah.
You have your testing, you believe in your science.
Right.
Come stay.
Right.
Let us stay at the camp.
I'm curious, the last time I was here and throughout a lot of the derailment, you were working closer in town here, you know, near the railroad tracks. You've since started working outside of town.
Yes.
Have you noticed an improvement in health or any changes? And can you just kind of talk about that?
Yes. My energy is back up. I overall feel better. I do. It was happening, it was so fresh and everything that you didn't realize how bad you felt until you were away from it long enough. I can be in the house now just a few minutes and just a few minutes and my eyes will burn and my nose. Before, you almost get nose blind to it. And I think maybe some of that may be the case with the EPA. I really believe they should all be tested for vinyl chloride. And even if their names doesn't appear on the tests, we shared ours.
Right.
I think it would be safe for their workers. I would consider it a workman's comp.
Yeah.
I think that instead of hiding people getting sick, it needs reported. And the fines, that's fine. But when you're intentionally exposing people to things that you know could kill them, there's a fine line between a cover-up and criminal charges. And I believe I feel in my heart, there should be a lot of criminal charges filed against a lot of people.
Agreed. Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned it's like the workman's comp kind of angle to this. Just I believe it was last week, OSHA finally actually hit Norfolk Southern. It's a pitiful fine for a company like Norfolk Southern. I think it's something like $50,000. They make that in a couple minutes, I would imagine, unfortunately. So that's not going to make an effect on them. But it was directly with workers who were for Norfolk Southern who were being exposed during the cleanup. I remember back in those early days, most of those guys weren't wearing any respirators. They were just out there in their regular work gear.
They were in my work every day buying cold medicine, allergies, things for burning eyes, Visine, you name it, every day that flew off our shelves. So there was quite a few that got sick. It was not just citizens.
Right. Yeah.
And it continued. And then they would be there one day. They'd be gone. You'd never see them again after that. They'd be sent home.
Yeah. I guess, it's been 6 months now. What are kind of your next steps? What are you hoping is the hopefully at some point happy or maybe not happy ending, but some sort of justice to end your story here?
Mine would be a safe home. Mine would be a safe home, and this home is never going to be safe again. It's just not. Too much damage for too long, and no one listened, and you would go, and I would stand up at the command center. I think I told you this. I would stand out there. I even wore a fluorescent vest and a cap, and would stand out there when the workers, when they would change shifts from midnight to the next day, and I would hear the briefings. I have that information that I have kept because I know what was said about my home. I know what the workers said about my home and what their recommendations was about my home. So there's no arguing that this home is not safe in court. It's what route does everyone want to take it to? Because that, again, could be a criminal charge after you have information and you still tell a family that it's safe to come back. And then 2 of those family members that got tested, the others never even got tested yet, have it in their system. Like I said, I trust in that God's going to work this out. But I listened. I would go in every day for the first month, and nobody ever knew. Nobody ever knew. I think I told you that, and then I went in there one day after, and they have somebody right at the door to check your badge. But it doesn't matter because I found out what I needed to know and how to fight and what to believe and who not to believe. And these workers that were coming in, you know, and testing the homes and things, they would read their recommendations. So, I mean, this has to stop. There has to be accountability for the way you're destroying families' lives. It's one thing that it happened, but to continue to do it day after day after day. There was the railroad, Norfolk Southern, it was CTEH, and it was the EPA, all lined up in a row. All you did was go up the steps and stand. And they all briefed.
Right.
They all briefed because the midnight shift would discuss things with the morning, not managers, but the ones in charge.
Yep.
I'm brain fog still.
You're good,
Some
you're good.
supervisors, thank you. But they would brief them on everything. And God led me every step of the way on what to do. I had never in my life dreamt that I would ever go through this.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, but you know, residents like yourself and many others we've talked to have had to step up and become scientists and, you know, engineers and all these other things, trying to learn all of the pieces to this, because unfortunately the people in the agencies that are supposed to do it, they won't give them, which is it's ridiculous at this point. Again, 6 months later, people are still living in Airbnbs and hotels and all this different stuff, relocated away from their homes. Most of them would love to live in their home or in a different home if they had the opportunity to. But instead of actually giving permanent solutions to this, and if people want to leave, making that a reality for folks and letting them move out of town, instead they're stuck in limbo, waiting at the whim of the railroad that caused all of these problems to begin with no real help from the government at any point. I want to ask one more question for you as we're on this kind of like government thing. The Governor DeWine finally sent a letter to the Biden administration asking for a disaster declaration. The letter has issues. They're saying there are no unmet needs in town, which is, I can ask you, I've asked this, there's a lot of, yes.
It's a lie, a total lie.
And that's the same reaction I've gotten from everybody that I've asked that question, if there are unmet needs. But the Biden administration has received this letter. Whether or not they can approve it as a disaster declaration, given there are no unmet needs, is up for debate. But to not even acknowledge The letter, I mean, they've absolutely seen it. They definitely see requests from governors. Senator Sherrod Brown also wrote a letter urging the president to do something about it recently. I heard that J.D. Vance was in town yesterday. I mean, these are people who are definitely reaching out. What is going on?
Schwimmer is the one that will not, for the railroad or the rail law that JD's trying to get, he won't even talk about it.
Yeah.
These government officials need to live close to a train track.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, as you can hear a train ripping by right now. It's good timing.
That would be a undue karma, especially with their track records with derailments. I think that would be.
Yeah.
I think that would be something that we could show them how much they matter to us if they went through something like that, because they've certainly showed us. But there's hope with the government, because I'm telling you, at least our local, we have somebody pretty special that's running for mayor, and I will give you the information to get in touch with that person. But I believe that that's a blessing from God. I'm really thinking about running for council.
That's right. You mentioned that. Yeah.
I didn't have the paperwork, but I think I'm going to try as a write-in. We need someone to finally start addressing and helping the residents that are going through so much. I've said all along, the ones that aren't, they're very blessed. I've acknowledged that, yes, they can deserve a park for what the town's been through. I think there's a way to help everyone, though, with funding, and I feel that should be done. So, I mean, if you want change, sometimes you just have to
do it.
Change it.
Yeah.
So there's few of us that have things in the works, and yeah.
Well, if you're in East Palestine, stay tuned for more on that, and maybe you'll be writing in Chrissy's name on the ballot in November is the election. For that?
Either that, or they could actually help get the home so I'm permanently relocated. But since I'm not,
right,
I'm still legally allowed to run.
Yeah. Well, Chrissy, unless there's anything else you wanna talk about, I appreciate the time. But if you do, I'll give you the opportunity.
I just want to thank you. I want to thank you so much. If it was not for you, everybody in America would think that everything was okay, and that it wasn't. No one was having issues. You are the one that puts your health on the line coming here, to tell our stories. Called us all the time to check on us, and just became our dear friend. You're an angel to us too.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, Chrissy. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks. That was our interview with Chrissy Ferguson. Again, if you can support our reporting, these trips are expensive and difficult to pull off. Flights, rental cars, getting John and myself out here, all that sort of stuff. StatusCoup.com/join is the way to help. For as little as $5 to $10 a month. We need to make sure that these stories continue to get out there. If folks in companies like Norfolk Southern can get away with what they're getting away with here, imagine what they can get away with if nobody is willing to come out and tell the stories. StatusCoup.com/join is the best way to help. Thanks for watching.